Okay.
Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Kwan. I'm an engineering manager at Microsoft. I work in the communication space, helping people to create chat and video calling apps by providing a set of UI components. You can imagine you can take these UI components and put them together to make something like Zoom or Teams or Skype or something like that. So it's been a super interesting ride. Definitely been working on it actually during the whole COVID thing. So it felt extremely relevant, and we'll be bringing out some more of those really cool tools in the coming months. So I just wanted to give a really quick shout out. Well, not a really quick shout out, but it was really great to have Sarah reach out on LinkedIn. I've always wanted to have an opportunity to give back. I've been as part of hackathons where there's been other speakers, and now the roles seem to have reversed a little bit. So I always love the enthusiasm, the creativity we see around hackathons, and I actually love participating in them as well. So thanks for giving me this opportunity to chat here. On hackathons, the last hackathon I probably competed in was actually before I became an engineering manager, which kind of speaks to the workload of being a manager. It was actually right around the time when Among Us came out. We got to use some of this really cool video calling tech, or voice calling tech, I should say, to actually create an auto muting experience for Among Us. So a lot of people they played with Discord that would do these things for you. We actually hooked into the game state and we were able to do this without Discord. So that was really interesting. It would actually turn on and off people's microphones if you're in discussion phase versus if you were playing, and then it just wouldn't turn your mic on ever again if you were dead. So that was really cool to see. And a lot of people were definitely super interested in that type of hack. I'm hoping by the end of this presentation, you can see that many of the things that I'm actually going to be talking about, you're probably on the right path and you're already thinking about it. I just want to share how important they actually are as you move forward. So today's presentation is about tips and tricks for jumpstarting that career. In the past, I've actually helped a lot of my colleagues out, even before I was working at Microsoft, in helping them out with what was necessary, helped out with their resumes and whatnot. And now like a lot of them are working around the world. So that was really exciting to see. I want to say that this isn't like a step-by-step recipe of things to follow. It's just a bunch of points that I felt were really important to help people along. I've broken this presentation actually into 3 parts where I want to talk about 4 things. The 3 parts being where you're probably at now and how these 4 areas that I'm going to speak to applies to you now, how it applies to how you improve upon them, and then how these 4 areas relate to what like future employers may be looking into. So understanding both where you are at, how you can improve, and what people are looking for will hopefully give you a really nice edge into how you prepare yourselves in your career, like essentially helping to jumpstart it. One other thing I kind of want to mention, maybe it's not going to be a problem. I'd love to be able to keep questions for the very end. I often find during presentations, people have really good questions, but those questions are actually answered on the next slide. And I didn't pass out these presentation slides ahead of time, so I can totally understand if people have those questions. For now, if you could write them down as we go through, I do have a questions section at the end, and that's probably the best time to be able to take those types of questions.
Yeah, sounds like being good for you.
All right. So the first area that I want to talk about in relation to where you guys may be at is like this concept of enthusiasm and curiosity, right? This is probably what you have the most abundance of right now in, in this stage of your career. Are you really excited about it? Like, this is the right time. You should be honestly excited about a lot of things. You're also kind of going on with like a super fresh slate. Like, there's not a lot of things to kind of deter you from a lot of really interesting ideas. I would say stay open to these ideas. Things constantly change all the time. So having an open mind to how we approach some of these challenges is probably one of the best things you can do. Also, like, don't lose out on these ideas. I have this problem even today, right? There's so many cool things out there that you're very curious about, right? Like like how do I connect into like crypto, or how do I do cool stuff with Docker containers or machine learning or computer vision? How do we do really cool VR things, or how do I write the next big mobile app? Write those ideas down. Write them down on paper if that's your thing. I personally like, I mean, full disclosure, I used to work in OneNote. So I actually write down a lot of these. I have a section in my OneNote just around these really cool ideas. It doesn't really matter if you're an Evernote user, if you're a Google Keep user, write down those things and don't lose out on them. It's an incredible treasure to have. And actually looking back on those, once you're further along in your career, you're like, wow, I thought that was really cool. Or I actually already did that. That's amazing. It's quite a present to read back onto. The next thing that I think is probably really important as you embark on and you're constantly thinking about what are these aspects I want to supercharge is like your technical skills, right? This area is not to tell you, okay, Java or Python is the way to go, right? It's more about high level things. So when I talk about technical skills here in this part of your career, some things I want to highlight on are, it's okay to not have all the answers. I think you're probably nodding like, duh, but this is a statement that I think holds throughout your whole career, right? Fundamentally, technology is changing all the time. You will actually never have all the answers, and it's okay to be cool with that. I think being okay to be vulnerable about this and finding the way to say, okay, but I'm actually going to go find out those answers is actually really key. I see a lot of people, even within Microsoft, struggling with that. And I would say that I struggled with that when I first joined Microsoft as well, because I got there and I said like, okay, cool. Like I want to impress people. I want to do really, really well. And there's tons of really smart people here. By acknowledging that you don't know things, you open yourself to be wrong less, which is a good thing. The next point here, how do I know I have these skills? Like as I'm learning new things, do I follow a bunch of tutorials? How do I know I hit that bar? It's difficult to tell. I would say if you can go chat with like one of your colleagues and teach them that, and they're able to apply it, that's a pretty good start. Right? Is it good enough to say that you know it perfectly on your resume? Maybe not, but I think like this is what we want to just like start growing these technical skills at this part of your career. And then the last point kind of feeds on the previous two. Like take your time. You're not gonna like knock out software engineering in like 4 years or something. It really is something that's going to grow and it's going to keep on growing. And giving yourself the time to learn is really important. I will say that as a manager, and I have directs under me in my group that don't know things, if you know how long it can take you to learn some of these things, that is actually really helpful, right? You can actually plan for that. You can say, okay, cool, it's going to take me like 4 weeks to go learn this, but then I can plan for that. And then I can tell like the product managers like, okay, we need plus 4 weeks, but I can tell you that this new feature is going to land at that time plus 4 weeks. So that's something that's really helpful to have. So experience. This is a tough time. I actually remember probably being in this part of my career where I would like to get these jobs, these like junior jobs, but they require 2 years of experience, but I don't have any experience. Like a common catch-22. And it sounds super silly. I think at this time, something that's different is I was in like post-secondary. So I would say that as you look towards like universities, for example, like going to SFU, BCIT, UBC, any of these schools that have internship or co-op programs is really great. Like you need to do like fairly okay to get into these programs, but that really is your foot in the door to like working with some pretty big companies. And then having that type of internship experience that you can put onto your resume like really helps build that value as you're pursuing like future endeavors. Not all experience though, I would say implies that you need to get paid for it in order for it to count as experience. Like today, you're in a hackathon, right? And you're working with really interesting technologies. Write down some of these really cool projects on your resume, right? Like that is something. It shows to people like you actually went out of your way. You didn't just go do what people told you to do. You actually like wanted to do this and you're proud of this. So that counts as experience, and it's actually really good experience. Another thing is I like talking to new devs, and I actually like hearing what gets them super excited. And then I go to, and then they say like, well, I don't know what to do now. And then I say like, what's stopping you from making it a side project? Like put it on GitHub, put it out there and keep working on it. It can be a little scary. Like we assume, oh, everyone's repo on GitHub is super pretty and there's no bugs and they're all amazing. In truth, there's a lot of bugs all over the place if you know where to look. And so put it on there. I would say it's not, I judge like how good something is by how it grows and not necessarily by what it looks like on that first Git commit. So like, don't be afraid about trying something out because it could like involve some technologies or be around some challenge that someone is looking for solving, right? The last part I think is super cool. I haven't done this personally myself, but I'd probably be open to helping out here. Open source projects. So we talked a little bit about side projects. We talked a little about like being a self-starter, but open source projects are out there. Microsoft has many open source projects as well. And these projects are not possible without the support of the community, right? Community can help by trying it out and sharing issues that they ran into it. Or sometimes these repositories have issues, which you can actually help and contribute code towards and fix this, right? If you do the latter part where you can actually help out, stay in touch with the maintainers of that project. Maybe they might actually be able to give you recommendations that you can actually put on your resume. And that has a lot of value. So I haven't had anyone, not that many external people like help solve some of the issues on my repo. But if they did and they were consistent, I would love to be able to give a recommendation. I think it's a really great way if you have nothing and then suddenly now you've actually made efforts towards improving a Microsoft product. That's very cool stuff. The fourth area here, coming from like where we are currently right now, is let me define what I think like a resume roughly is. It's a way to roughly share with others like what you can do or what you have done before. A really complex problem though is like, what do I put in it? Like I'm just starting to write code right now. I don't have all this work experience. I don't have tons of projects. And so like it's very quickly becoming, I worked maybe on one project. I went to this school and this is my name. So what can you do here? If going back to like some of the previous areas I talked about before, you can work on side projects, right? I think like even adding like slightly unrelated work experience is helpful. So if you work somewhere part-time, someone has entrusted you with the responsibility of their business, like part of their business. If you're like doing some team leading stuff or helping to organize things, people are depending upon you for organization, right? For keeping the lights on in certain circumstances. Put that on. Your resume will evolve over time. So will all the part-time work stay on there? Over time, I would probably say we'll shift it around, but I'll get to that part later. But yeah, like it can be difficult. So what is a good resume for someone in high school? Just put down everything. I think like personally, I think a really nice sweet spot is about 2 pages, right? 1 page isn't really enough. And then 3 pages, well, I've stopped reading out for the 2. It can be a lot. All right, moving on. So this is the second portion of this presentation. So we talked about like where we are now and those key areas, and then like how do we improve these things over time, right? This like what do I look for in terms of growing like enthusiasm, curiosity, like technical skills, your experience, and then your resume as well, right? So building on enthusiasm, curiosity, we were super curious and super excited about all these new technologies. And soon, if not already, you start to realize you can probably start to manipulate certain things, like certain real world things. What I think would be really great to do is actually start to direct some of this curiosity away from just what would be cool and actually think about some of the real world application, like what are the real problems, right? We live in North America, a really nice, comfortable West Coast bubble, I would say. And it's really easy to say like, look, we don't got problems. Like TikTok solves my boredom issues and we got Wi-Fi and LTE everywhere. and everyone feels like pretty safe. But like we're not really only building things just for ourselves, right? Think about rural areas in Africa that may not have consistent LTE and Wi-Fi connections, right? Like they fundamentally have a new set of problems. Think about places where people don't feel safe, right? How can we build applications for them? What about, I guess, like places like India where there is internet, but it's actually not very fast at all, right? Like that presents another set of problems. Are they going to be doing 4K streaming on YouTube? Probably not, right? So those are a number of problems, but like none of those problems are really here. And it turns out we actually do have problems here too, maybe just not at the scale that we're thinking of, right? What about a certain company that has to send millions, if not billions of packages to customers on a daily basis, right? Like the Amazons, and that's basically in our backyard. And so there are tons of real world problems that we just honestly don't think about. But then if there's so many problems, how do I pick and choose? And this is that third point that I want to touch on, which is like trying to find the right challenge for you. So as you hear about all these different types of challenges and problems, you probably have your own values as well that you think strongly about, right? Like maybe you want to represent certain groups of people. Maybe you're super technical. You don't care about all those things, but you care about this like technical perfection, right? Those types of values bundled with the problems that exist all around us, like you will find these really interesting problems to work on. And I hope that you bring over your level of enthusiasm and curiosity to kind of push the boundaries in some of those areas. Building on technical skills. So yeah, we went over in a previous section around technical skills where like, it's okay to say you don't know. And here I'm saying there's always going to be room for improvement, right? Like technology changes. I'm probably going to be dating myself, so sorry for the super old examples, but like I would say JavaScript today is not the JavaScript that was here 5 years ago, right? And I would say 10 years ago, we didn't even really think, oh gosh, it might be 15 or 20 years ago, we didn't even think about web development as being like JavaScript based at all. Like there was a time where JavaScript like was like, oh, that's cute. But we're just going to send HTML from these servers instead and have super static web pages. So like things are always going to be changing. Be open to knowing that there's always going to be room for improvement, right? As you build upon these technical skills, try to find a common thing that is hard as you're trying to learn these new computer languages. That will basically push you to like make sure that you are really trying out different parts of how this language works. Like, how does the typing system work? How does it handle like async concepts? How does it handle dealing with network connections and sockets and whatnot? Those are really great little mini topics or like things to build around as you learn a new language to make sure that you've really had a good breadth of what that language entails. And so this kind of like lends to the last part of like, what does mastery look like as you figure out these skills, right? At what point can you say like, I know this, or I am a domain expert in here, right? It's okay to say that, and what I'm gonna say now is like, I think a lot of people have different definitions and your definition is probably gonna change over time. But I think just starting at saying like, I can teach someone else this, like that's a really great start, right? Maybe you get to the point where you start doing like YouTube streams of this and people are following your tutorials, for example. Is that what mastery is? I'm not quite sure. But those are just like different levels of mastery that we should be thinking about as we're building out our technical skills. Building on experiences. So we talked about a little bit like work experience and stuff before. How do we build on these experiences? I think the first step, like with most other ways, is just get out of your comfort zone, because that's surely how you grow, right? Put yourself in like, I don't feel comfortable about this, but sure, let's do it. I mean, how many times can I honestly be wrong, right? Immerse yourself with these opportunities. I think like something that's just tying back this presentation, I guess, as a meta point was, I'm writing code and I'm working with groups of people. But if people were to reach out to me and say like, hey, can you present this or can you talk about that? Like, I'm happy to. Am I a little uncomfortable? Sure. I think that's okay, right? I think like we can all laugh at ourselves later, but you're actually going to become stronger for it. And it's actually really great if you feel comfortable with being uncomfortable. At Microsoft, we kind of put this all bundled into something called growth mindset, right? Like we want to keep learning and succeeding, but like not everything is always a pure success. Like sometimes we just like learn that like, oh, this was actually a bad idea, or maybe the technology isn't ready here yet. I've been in many talks where there's been extremely senior people, like top people at Microsoft that have failed, where Bill Gates was just like, hey, so what are you doing here? And that's obviously a very uncomfortable situation, right? Owning up to it, learning, admitting that there's kind of mistakes and how we move forward, that is a very humbling experience. That's the growth mindset that will take you from like 0 to hero, right? So just it's fine. It's fine. Like things happen. And then the next part that I want to talk about is like building out your resume, right? So we talked earlier before that like I didn't really have that much to put on my resume. How does that resume evolve, right? So we're probably going to be learning new things all the time. We're going to refine the skills that you put on that resume. As you go through your careers, as you do more hackathon projects, you're going to have many more things to write in terms of those projects and experiences. I just want to like highlight on the fact that like it really is about quality, not quantity. So if you have 20 projects, maybe let's just stick to the top 3 or top 4, 5 maybe. I would say if you have so many projects and some of them are more relevant to certain jobs than others potentially, shift around your resume a little bit. I used to keep my resume in like a Google Doc with like all 20 projects. Well, I didn't have 20 projects, maybe like 7. And then like based off of like certain jobs, I would like probably like delete some and then save as a copy, so that when hiring managers were looking at my resume, they would just say like, oh, this person has like really cool projects, and then look at that, as opposed to boring them with like the other number of projects that may not be as relevant. So this is the third portion of the presentation that I prepared. So we talked about where you might be coming from. We talked about how you can probably improve some of those key areas, or at least that's what I'm suggesting, that I suggest for everyone. And then the next part is like, what does it look like from the other side, right? We can prepare all we want, but if we don't really know where the target is, where the goal is, it can be really difficult to hit that mark. So as an engineering manager that actually is actively hiring right now, I guess it's really great that I can provide this perspective to help you guys out. So I think like first and foremost, always looking for amazing engineers, right? So I need people that are super keen about technology, always curious about the next big thing. They truly love what they're doing, and it shows, right? When it shows, and you have a bunch of those people together, you actually start to build a really good engineering culture, right? Where people are always bringing in new ideas, and people are learning to iterate and being okay with maybe like with things failing, and other people are just saying like, okay, that's cool. Like, what did we learn? How do we move forward, right? We tend not to like get stuck on the blame game, because that's not really super constructive. We tend to think about like, what can we learn? Okay, how do we avoid this in the future? Okay, let's go for it again. And then when you have these people that are super energetic about all these things in one place, I like, for me personally, like I don't have to go tell people what to do. Everyone understands the mission of what we're trying to do. And then everyone starts coming with really cool ideas, and we start to create these really delightful experiences for our users. And that is a common trend, I think, across like any successful team, right? You want everyone thinking about the right goals and how they can help things along. So coming back to these areas again. So when I look for like a candidate, for example, in this area, like I almost index this a little bit more so than the others. And I'll say why. Like, you can't train this level of enthusiasm and curiosity, right? So seeing someone that's fundamentally excited about these new challenges is fantastic. Being able to go on for hours and hours and hours. Well, we try not to, but some meetings can go out of hand. like being able to talk about these things, present new ideas, thinking about the end user, how are they going to use it? That like tells me a lot about someone, and tells me that I can basically trust them with the mission, right? I don't have to be staring at them. If I have to be staring, or if like an engineering manager has to like be watching every single person doing their job, that person's not having a good time. And a lot of and when people feel like they're doing their best work, they really come alive, their energy level goes up. And then when the energy level starts to like affect how other people work and everyone starts feeling super energized, you start to actually have an amazing engineering culture, right? A lot of this involves like, hey, I can help you out here, or hey, I noticed this thing, can we work on it together, right? Like that all kind of helps to build a really great culture. And then of course, like, are people open to like new things? So it's not just me presenting new ideas, for example, like going back to like the previous point. I expect like people, as they're working with bigger companies, like they have to be interested for trying new things. If no one's coming with new ideas, products tend to get super stale and they don't meet the challenges and like modern expectations that users have, right? So like always be interested in new things. And I think like to the point of everyone's like audience, like this is like the perfect thing for you guys. Like everything's new. So keep up with this. Technical skills, like from the big company perspective. This is probably the driest part of this presentation, but like you can imagine hiring managers looking for like candidates, like do they have the technical skills that apply to like what we're trying to build, right? We would see it like in their resume. We would try and think as a whole, like would there be like good fits across not just the current project, but like future projects, right? Or across team. So yeah, I would say like I wouldn't be super worried about technical, like specific technical skills, but like let me dial this one back a bit. I've gone and goofed this one. Oh no, what's going on? Okay. Let me repeat this one again, I guess. So I guess like as a manager, I'm looking to, we're always looking for like technical skills, but it's not specifically just for a specific project, right? I think like you might have heard like, oh, there's like a general software engineer, or there might be like very specific things like a front end engineer. I like to think that as long as you know something like Java or C# or Python, you can tend to figure out any other technologies. Like you figured out the hard part. As you learn new things, you'll figure out like, oh, it's like this or it's like that. And so you'll kind of figure out some of those specifics over time, right? And that lends this like second topic here, which is like, there will always be new technologies. And I feel I've like talked about this like several times, but like, yes, there's always new technologies. You're gonna have to figure those things out and they will help the product. And if you're unwilling to learn some of these new technologies, the product goes stale. It's not a good time for anyone. But underlyingly, aside from technical skills and whatnot, it's like, can someone know how to deal with unknowns? Like, do you have a process in place where you accept that you don't know things, right? But you know how to go about this. Like, yes, I acknowledge I don't know how to do this, but I've noticed that there's these 3 keywords. And so I'm going to go Google these 3 keywords. I'm going to figure out like what areas those are about. And then as I Googled, there was like 6 more unknown terms I didn't know about. And then doing that, like you find a way to figure out the unknown, like that's super key. And I think that's actually really important in terms of technical skills, more than knowing any specific skill. Experiences. So like, I'll probably just keep using Microsoft examples. And it sounds really bad, I've been saying Googling, but like, to be honest, just use the right tool that helps you with the job. Has like this person like worked on similar challenges? Have they worked on the similar side projects? Those help, right? Like that means that like as an engineer, like you're thinking already in the right domain space, you're thinking of the right type of edge cases because you've experienced those types of challenges before. If you haven't, but you're super excited to work on a team like that, like side projects are super simple to spin off, and they give you a really unique perspective of how to do it if you're not necessarily assigned to a task like this. I would say as a manager, I don't get to code as much, but if I do see certain problems like this, I actually spin up side projects myself, right? I want to know, hey, is this thing actually viable? No one can honestly work on it right now, but I think I can. And I spend a couple days on it. I give myself the time to learn and turn out like, yeah, maybe it was a good idea. And I present it with the team. So like people with a bunch of different types of experiences, it's always really helpful to see. All right. The resume at that like more advanced level. So at the resume we talked about at the very beginning, you might not have that much stuff. As you're improving, you're going to have a lot of things, but we might need to slim it down to 2 pages. At this level, we're talking more about like refinement. So show your impacts. So I think like a really like what did you actually do? That almost the number, which is kind of scary. So here's an example. You could say, hey, I built out a user interface to help people buy my products on Amazon, which is good, right? You've proved that you worked on a really big problem, but like, how did you actually make, like, what was that actual impact, right? So if it was really, I improved conversion rate of customers viewing, and then to buying a product, but like, and then proceeding to buy a product by like 23%. I'm not going to go into details of how that was possible or what was made, but like that 23% actually shows a lot. It helps people like really dig into like, wow, you really analyze that and you actually know that number. Like if I had to compare someone that did the first thing versus someone that did the second thing, the person that did the second thing, that was so much more specific, right? That's actually tangible benefit. This speaks into like the next part here, being able to speak about points in your resume. So there's going to be a lot of things in your resume, a lot of things that will go in, and then like some things that you should probably take out. If you're in an interview, for example, I think anything in your resume is fair game. So it's almost better to remove things that you're a little hazy on if it's been a while than to keep it on if it looked impressive. Because if someone were to ask you something and you're not quite sure of what it was anymore, you did it a long time ago, it looks pretty bad. It almost looks as bad as you saying you did something and you haven't, right? So instead, be confident with what you have on this resume. Again, I'm only suggesting that's about 2-ish pages. Hopefully by this time, it's not too hard to figure out that right type of content and to be able to have a really long technical conversation about any of those types of projects is good. I think you should be really proud of everything that you have on your resume. Okay, great. So in closing, I just want to say to everyone in this presentation, and to be honest, everyone in the hackathon, you're already on the right path, right? Like you're already forging like probably like a project or really great experience that you can add to your resume that kind of helps amount to your career, right? I think thinking more broadly, consider about like how you can kind of build like upon what you currently have to close the gap between what you have and what others are looking for, right? That will kind of help you get to where you want to be. And then lastly, I mean, I'm just reading the slide right now, but it is kind of scary out there. There's a lot of things to think about or deal with, or maybe you didn't think about everything. So like help each other out, like ask each other like, hey, can you check out my resume, right? Or, hey, can you give me a mock interview? Or does this make sense? Can I teach you this thing? Because I think I have a pretty good idea about it, but can I explain it to you, right? A lot of these things are really helpful to have and to kind of help jumpstart that career. And yeah, you can each help each other on your path forward. All right, that's all I got. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for speaking today. And we actually have a question in the chat. And Sam asked, what is one memorable experience you've had as a manager?
That's a good question. I would say that there's always so much chaos going on that it's really difficult to pick one thing. I am kind of a new manager. I started in December, but it's been quite a wild ride so far. I would have to say something that was super interesting for me was being able to present my first promotion to someone on my team. They'd worked really, really hard for it. I worked really hard trying to make sure that they were able to have the right type of projects to show that level of impact, and to be able to present someone with that really hard work was really great. I know it sounds really weird.
Yes.
Yeah.
It seems like public speaking is pretty much always involved in your work. Do you think that public speaking was ever an issue for you?
Yeah. It's definitely an issue. I definitely struggled in this PowerPoint presentation for the last 2 days.
You did great today.
It's it's a challenge. I think that we can always compare ourselves against the greats, right? Like you can sit and watch like TED Talks for a while and then realize like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to get there. I think I've definitely seen a lot of engineers within Microsoft that are just super techy and don't speak that much. As you approach like senior level, so there's like SD1, SD2, senior, principal, and then it goes up from there, but they're more businessy kind of roles. You need to consider something of like technical influence. Can you influence groups of people to help with initiatives? Because you can't code everything yourself, right? So in order to do this, you do need to be able to communicate out. You need to a certain extent, do some of this like public speaking stuff. But being able to do that means that you'll have a larger technical influence. You'll be able to make larger, you'll be able to affect more products and actually be able to do really amazing things for your users. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. And another question from Victor. How many people do you work with on a usual day?
It's interesting. I would say like physically 0.
For now, for now.
Yeah. Probably chatting with 4 to 5 people in meetings. A lot of the people are on my team, but as a manager, you actually do a lot of communicating with other partner teams as well, right? Because we can't build everything ourselves. And so, yeah, there is a fair amount of names to figure out. I'm glad actually within Microsoft, everyone's super friendly. So a lot of people just like reach out on Teams, and they just say like, hey, I'm working on this, can you help me out? And those are like kind of one-offs, but you might run into like 10 people one day, 5 people another, 20. On a usual day, maybe like 4.
Yeah, so 4. Does that answer your question, Victor? This is my question. Was your career path ever influenced by family? Like, did your parents ever want you to pursue something else?
I had the chill Asian parents,
Nice.
where they were like, just like follow your heart, and I was like, oh, I don't need that. I could do better. But my family's actually super artsy. That's why. So they're just like, just do what you want to do. And I think it just kind of, I think that it exceeded expectations, but I wanted to pursue this technical path and get into there. But I actually like used to be huge into just like drawing and doodling all the time. And I think they thought like, well, if he does that, that's fine. But yeah, if he pursues more, then that's great. I don't know. We have that typical Asian family where we don't really like show a lot of appreciation all that much though.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they appreciate it. Can you only use Microsoft software? That's a great question. Not necessarily the case. So we need to always make sure that we can provide the best experience for our customers. We acknowledge that we don't have the best possible products in every domain. And so we learn how to do a bunch of different, we use a bunch of different products. I have a really cool story for you. So you guys know that Microsoft Vancouver office, like downtown above Nordstrom, right? Okay, I'll assume head nods. So that's kind of our big building in Vancouver. When it was opening, 2 people, like Justin Trudeau came one time. That was all right, but like 2 big people came. I don't know if you might have heard of them before. Satya Nadella and Bill Gates.
Bill Gates.
yeah, sure. And Bill Gates super quiet. But Satya, like this is back when I was working in OneNote. He noticed that we weren't using Teams, and this is when Teams first came out.
Mhm.
He noticed we were using Slack.
Oh.
And he asked us, like, why are you guys not using Teams? Like, it's a really great, it's gonna be a really great product. It had just come out. And I think he had a really great mentality about it, which was cool. Keep using your Slack. But I want you to provide feedback for teams on how to make teams better, right?
Mhm.
So it's totally okay to not use only Microsoft software, but like help Microsoft grow was basically the answer.
One other question from Brian. How are the GitHub repositories set up to have a very structured program and allow people to work together?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd imagine maybe you guys are just starting to learn Git or have used GitHub for a bit and it can seem a little chaotic at times. I think in order for a lot of people to work together, you actually need a really good set of procedures. So like a pipeline that does style checks and a bunch of other stuff so that everyone doesn't have to hand on everyone else to like follow the same type of like code styles and whatnot, because mistakes can happen. Are you, is your question more about like technical, like how do you guys deal with branching, or can you be more, I don't know if you can be more specific about your question?
Let's just say first response in chat. Technical.
Okay, cool. I think, okay, so I don't want to assume anything. So I'll just say that like typically what people do if they're working on that same repository is you will create a branch off of main and you'll do your feature work. And then that feature work will get pull requested back into main. So you never submit into main. I think that's probably a really sane way to go about it. If you're not part of that repo, instead of creating a branch, you'll create a pull request. You'll probably fork that repo and then do a pull request upstream. And then people that are maintaining that repo will review it and then suggest any changes. And if it's good, it'll probably get merged into the main of the upstream repository. Did people follow along with that? Like, I'm always kind of conscious of like, did I just drop a lot? Did I just drop a lot of words that made no sense?
Maybe for me, but I'm sure that Brian probably understood that.
So when I mentioned things like, okay, you guys know what a pull request is, right? Pull
No.
request? Okay. Okay. Have we committed code to a branch before? Have you committed code to a branch before?
No, I'm
Okay.
not very experienced.
All right. I can drop some links on like normal Git flows. That might be super cool. Again, like I don't want to assume that everyone knows how to use Git. I think that's super unfair, but it is incredibly a powerful tool, especially as you're trying to organize code. So I think like way back when, before Git was used a lot, people would just like copy a folder of code onto like a USB drive and give it to someone else, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't scale very well for obvious reasons. And so that's why we use like products like GitHub that let you like commit code to somewhere where someone can pull it down and then you don't need USB drives and you can actually see the history of what changes happened and when. So that's like a bit of a reason why you want to work with Git. So yeah. Some of those definitions like upstream and downstream. So I mentioned like forking. Forking is when you create a clone of your own repo, but it's still connected to the original repo because I need to know where it's coming from. So the original repo is considered the upstream one, and the one that you just forked off of it is a downstream one. And if you ever wanted changes to go into the upstream one, we would pull a request into it and the change would go upstream. All right, I'll leave it at that. I feel like I'm not qualified to fully answer that in that detail.
I'll do my research at the end of this. Brian has more questions. Actually, is it possible for you to look in chat?
Or yeah, I'm looking in chat right now.
Okay.
One sec. Oh. Sorry, I didn't catch the microservices part of the question. One sec. Microservices are cool. The less that we have to think about really big projects, the better, right? So that's why we like it, but there are problems with microservice architectures. Like each one basically needs their own port and all that other kind of stuff. And so there's actually a lot of overhead. If you have hundreds of microservices, I don't think that we're going to get away from it, but there are some reasons why you might not want to always pursue a microservice architecture. Additionally, for any web app, would you recommend having a front end and a back end server? Yeah, a web app is really, it's like if you compare it to a mobile app basically has a front end and like it has this like front end and back end, and a web app has it too. And you're not going to get away from this front end and back end server. If you just have a front end, you won't be able to do a lot of things. And if you just have a back end server, you probably won't be able to like have a really nice front end that's as if you had a dedicated front end web app. So yes, you will need both. Okay. Would I split the repositories? Depends on the application and how microservice-y it is. Right now, we're using something called like Azure Static Web Apps for a project that we just started. Yeah, Monolith. Monolith has its place. But for splitting out projects, I would actually keep them in the same repo. We use something called Azure Static Web Apps that allows us to have like a nice slim front end, and all the back end is actually a series of Azure functions, right? And that actually allows us to scale and keep this microservice architecture, and we have them all inside the same repo. So it's really easy to play around with. A common bit of feedback I got from my team is if we split things into multiple repos, it's actually really difficult to maintain. And so if that's why we start seeing things like people using like Lerna or Rush, where it actually maintains multiple projects inside the same repo. Okay, cool. With GitHub, I'm assuming GitHub Actions, wouldn't it be hard to have command runs to get the front end files, get the back end files? I'm not quite sure I understand this Git Actions question. Really loving the enthusiasm here. Oh no. Can you just, okay, great. Dodge that one. Any other questions?
Do you have any advice for students who want to look for software engineering internships in the future?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are all in high school right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I would say that a lot of these internships are kind of geared towards people that they think have traditionally gone through like a little bit of a bachelor, like of computer science or applied science or engineering. So the side projects and creating your own things are a really great way to push forward with that. And I think that companies that are taking a note of people that are really good and not having that traditional education of going through university is starting to become a trend that seems to be growing. So hopefully if you have a lot of really amazing projects, like that puts you further along than people that are maybe just in third year university, for example. Okay, cool. Favorite language, Vim versus Emacs, tabs or spaces. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So I think like Brian probably hacks a fair amount. Hope you're having a good chuckle right now. My team works on UI components. Here, I can drop a place where you can check out our storybook. ACS. That's our little storybook of all of our UI components to help you build like calling apps and chat apps. Favorite language, TypeScript for now. Every language is kind of exactly the same to a certain extent. So I care more about like, what can I do with it? And TypeScript lets me be on that JavaScript side, but like also never have like undefined errors at runtime and silly things like that. So the typing and breaking on transpilation has been really helpful, and I love that a lot. But if I had to go to like a Node.js backend or like C# backend or whatever, like it's whatever. It's kind of like whatever is the best language for the job, I would say. Vim versus Emacs. Oh my God, I'm not like that, dude. I know like my manager loves that. He swears by Vim 100%. I think he even had like a tech talk about it. Again, I'm just like, just give me VS Code, dude. Like there's tons of extensions. You can do Vim cool commands in there too. But I got to think about the big picture sometimes. Like I don't get the time to get into all the little editors. Tabs or spaces. Oh man. So like there's an actual like technical like when you actually get to like character counts, as you move things across the wire, like the number of characters actually matter, right? So I know some people are kind of huge into tabs, especially when you're moving code from point A to point B. So I'll say tabs, but with today's editors, it does all the spacing for you already. So I don't want to start any wars. Cool. I will say that like it's okay to honestly change how you feel about certain things over time. It can change from like between different engineering teams you're on. It is really funny to have your opinion as to why. I know when like a new engineering team gets together, maybe for bubble tea or something, they love kind of going into these like controversial topics between Dota matches or league matches, I should say. Yeah. I actually don't play either. I think like my girlfriend's so good at League that like she only has me on her Smurf account. So I um see, that's how bad I am. I'm not really quite sure. We keep certain boundaries. What games do I play? Okay, cool. Yeah, going super more chill. Been mostly doing Valorant, but I don't play competitive just because I can't seem to find really good people. I think the last competitive game I played, we played against a Smurf on their side, so it wasn't fun at all. So yeah, I don't want to reveal my rank there. Dude, it sucks so much. Like, why are you in this and you're like 30 kills up? I don't get it. It's like I have to go fight off tens. Like maybe like bronze 2. Anyways, please don't try and find me. Oh yeah, that's a good question, Brian. Coding interview. You probably know like LeetCode, HackerRank, all those things. They're good. Just try and understand the underlying fundamentals behind it, right? The data structures thing. Like, why does this thing exist? It just sucks. But in real world, those things are really helpful. I don't know if you heard of things like binary trees, for example, but they are really great ways to organize data where you don't have to look through everything, right? Yeah. I don't know, like YouTube is good and there's a lot of really good tutorials, and then you hear like, oh, a really great example for trees. In Office, they represent the document as a bunch of nodes. And I think if you looked at like, you can actually break a Word document into XML, for example, which is basically like a tree, right? There's like parents and there's like multiple like siblings, and then those like, sorry, multiple children, and those children also like have siblings under the same parent, and it goes down. And what you can do with that is like, you don't actually have to iterate through every single element now, right? If you kind of know which group you're kind of going into, it's a lot faster to go to that specific area than to like go through all the elements. So that's like one reason why you'd want to use like a tree in certain cases, right? Yeah, sounds like you guys already know where to look on YouTube. I'm just happy to hear, like, it's one thing to like hear what you should be doing, and being told, but like, and being told like what to do, but actually talking to someone in real life that may have gone through some of these things can help you with that level of confidence, right? To help you know that you are making the right decisions. So yeah, I'm happy to help out here. Is LinkedIn useful for high school students? I mean, it helps Sarah open up dialogue with me to have this presentation. So yes. What are some important qualities you look for in candidates? The energy. I think that you can honestly learn all the tech skills, but I need someone with the right attitude, right? Someone that's super open-minded, someone that's like down for trying to hack on something, even if they know that it may not work out, right? That's how you get those like technical opinions, and that's how you can like start to build really amazing things, because like, oh, I know that this thing works, so I know this thing doesn't work, right? I will say that LinkedIn does kind of get like clickbaity. So I don't log on all the time. But it is good to have those connections, right? It's like, I don't want to add you on Instagram because like I don't know you that well, but like professionally, I know of you and that's how we would connect. So there is a time and place for LinkedIn over other types of social networks. Awesome. Yeah, we're at time. If you have any other questions, feel free to have Sarah reach out to me. Although you could reach out to me too. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm like the Alex Kwan that probably matches the picture that I put in the description of this presentation. So yeah, thank you everyone. Oh, send the link to my LinkedIn. Oh, for my project. Yeah, sure. Come check it out. It's still obviously a work in progress. We technically haven't gone to general availability with it yet. 1 second, let me. Oh, I'm still sharing my screen. Let's not share my screen. 1 sec. Cool. This one right here. Yeah, but there's also the storybook as well. So maybe like check it out. I would say like just treat this like as a professional thing. So maybe like don't flutter GitHub issues, for example, but I think it's a really interesting example of how a repo evolves over time. Cool. So yeah, I dropped the URL to the repo and then to the storybook. Have you guys played with Storybook before or you know of it? Cool. So Storybook is like a really great way. Like if you have a bunch of UI components, you're just reading like text to tell you what a UI component is, like that sucks. Storybook is a way for us to like render out the various UI components and you can actually toggle with them and see what they look like under different conditions. It's kind of a better way to do documentation for visual things. And so we're exploring that out. And Storybook is not like a Microsoft product. It is like an open source product that a lot of other teams use across the industry. And so this is another reason why like it's okay to not just be 100% Microsoft, right? Like we're building this for people and we want them to use like tools that they are expecting to use.
Does anyone have any last questions for Alex?
Oh, my bad. Cool. I actually don't use Zoom all that much. So, so there's the storybook. And here is the UI library repo. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's actually all the time we have today. It was really nice having you.
Awesome. Thanks for letting me go 4 minutes over. I love the energy and excitement. Yeah, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Share your really cool projects. I'd love to hear about them. All right. See you, everyone.
Have a nice day.
Bye.